Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yatha Paragamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Saganaraganatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Harijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Rana Krishna Parant Sahagana Lalita Shivishkam Vitamscha Om Jnana Timaranda Shagyana Shana Shalagya Shakshuram Militam Yena Tasma Shri Gurave Namah Gurva Bhistam Supuragam Guruganarasisha Sambhushitam Chintya Chintya Samasta Vedanipanam Shri Rupa Patanagam Govindabhidam Ujwalam Bharatanam Bhaktiyan Vidam Sundaram Vande Vishwagurun Shah Divyat Bhagavat Premno Ibijapranam Devam Divyatanam Suchanda Varanam Balarka Chelan Shitam Sandrananda Puram Sadeka Varanam Vairagya Vidyam Buddhim Sri Siddhanta Nidhim Subhakti Lasitam Saraswatanam Baram Bandetam Shivadam Madeka Sharanam Nyashishvara Sridharam Vanchakalpatarubhyasya Kripa Sindhu Bhyevacha Patitanam Pavenibhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah Namo Mahaprabhaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namane Gauratavishe Namah. So we're reading from Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita by Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami. Translation and commentary by Srila Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupad. This is Adi-lila chapter 7, Lord Chaitanya and 5 features about the Pancha-tattva. So we'll start with verse 22. Puna Puna Piyaya Hoy Mahamata Nache Kande Hasegai Jaiche Maramata. Sri Pancha-tattva themselves danced again and again, and thus made it easier to drink nectarian love of Godhead. They danced, cried, laughed, and chanted like madmen, and in this way they distributed love of Godhead. People generally cannot understand the actual meaning of chanting and dancing. Describing the Goswamis, Sri Srinivasacharya stated, Krishnod Kirtana Ganad Nartana Paro. Not only did Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his associates demonstrate this chanting and dancing, but the 6 Goswamis also followed in the next generation. The present Krishna conscious movement follows the same principle, and therefore, simply by chanting and dancing, we have received good responses all over the world. It is to be understood, however, that this chanting and dancing do not belong to this material world. They are actually transcendental activities, for the more one engages in chanting and dancing, the more he can taste the nectar of love of Godhead. Patra patra bichar nahi stanastan jai jaha pai taha kore premadan. In distributing love of Godhead, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his associates did not consider who was a fit candidate and who was not, nor whether such distribution should or should not take place. They made no conditions. Wherever they got the opportunity, the members of the Pancha-tattva distributed love of Godhead. There are some rascals who dared to speak against the mission of Lord Chaitanya by criticizing the Krishna conscious movement for accepting European and Americans as Brahmins and offering them sannyas. But here is an authoritative statement that in distributing love of Godhead, one should not consider whether the recipients are Europeans, Americans, Hindus, Muslims, etc. The Krishna conscious movement should be spread wherever possible, and one should accept those who thus become Vaishnavas as being greater than Brahmins. Hindus being greater than Brahmins, Hindus, or Indians. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu desired that his name be spread in each and every town and village on the surface of the globe. Therefore, when the cult of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is spread all over the world, should those who embrace it not be accepted as Vaishnavas, Brahmins, and sannyasis? These These foolish arguments are sometimes raised by envious rascals, but Krishna-conscious devotees do not care about them. We strictly follow the principles set down by the Pancha-tattva. So when this came out, this Pancha-tattva, this is the 7th chapter of Adi-lila. This was actually the first volume published of the Chaitanya Charitamrita. They did chapters 1 through 6 was not published yet, but this Pancha-tattva volume, starting with chapter 7, the 2nd volume of Chaitanya Charitamrita, that was published first. Lutiya kaya diya bandara ujade ascharya bandara prema shata gunabare. Although the members of the Pancha-tattva plundered the storehouse of love of Godhead and ate and distributed its contents, there was no scarcity, for this wonderful storehouse is so complete that as the love is distributed, the supply increases hundreds of times. A pseudo-incarnation of Krishna once told his disciple that he had emptied himself by giving all knowledge and was thus spiritually bankrupt. Such bluffers speak in this way to cheat the public, but actual spiritual consciousness is so perfect that the more it is distributed, the more it increases. Bankruptcy is a term that applies in the material world, but the storehouse of love of God in the spiritual world can never be depleted. Krishna is providing for millions and trillions of living entities by supplying all their necessities. Even if all the innumerable living entities wanted to become Krishna conscious, there would be no scarcity of love of Godhead, nor would there be insufficiency in providing for their maintenance. Our Krishna conscious movement was started single-handedly, and no one provided for our livelihood. But at present, we are spending hundreds and thousands of dollars all over the world, and the movement is increasing more and more. Thus, there is no question of scarcity. Although jealous persons may be envious, if we stick to our principles and follow in the footsteps of the Pancha-tattva, this movement will go on unchecked by imitation swamis, sannyasis, religionists, philosophers, or scientists, for it is transcendental to all material considerations. Therefore, those who propagate the Krishna conscious movement should not be afraid of such rascals and fools. So Prabhupada, when he left for America, he had practically no money. Just a.
Or did he just have like $5 or something?
No, something like that, $7 like that, but.
Hardly.
Yeah. But he had a trunk full of books of for Srimad Bhagavatam.
Right, it was like a suitcase, and he had all his the translations that he's done. Right?
No, he had some books that were published. Mm-hmm. He went there, and he first lived lived in Butler, Pennsylvania, with a married couple, and after 1 year, then he went to New York. Ucha-lila prema banya chodike medai Sri Buddha Balak Juba Sabare Dubai. The flood of love of God had swelled in all directions, and thus young men, old men, women, and children were all immersed in that inundation. When the contents of the storehouse of love of Godhead is thus distributed, there is a powerful inundation that covers the entire land. In Sridham Mayapur, there is sometimes a great flood after the rainy season. This is an indication that from the birthplace of Lord Chaitanya, the inundation of love of Godhead should be spread all over the world, for this will help everyone, including old men, young men, women, and children. The Krishna conscious movement of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is so powerful that it can inundate the entire world and interest all classes of men in the subject of love of God. So this happens about every 7 years. There's a big flood in Mayapur, also in Navadip. It was quite normal. After the rainy season, then from all upper Bengal, so many rains are flowing into the Ganges upstream, and then it comes down near to Mayapur and also to Navadip from up the upper parts of the north of Bengal, and then there's a flood. And sometimes the rains would be, the flood would be many years, like 4 feet, like that, about 4 feet. And sometimes it would be even more than that. And they'd have to take the cows in the mott and they'd put them on the roof of the prasadam hall. Sajjana Durjana Pangu Jara Andagun. Sajjana Durjana Pangu Jara Andagan Prema Bandhyaya Dubaila Jagatarajan. The Krishna conscious movement will inundate the entire world and drown everyone, whether one be a gentleman, a rogue, or even lame, invalid, or blind. Here again, it may be emphasized that although jealous rascals protest that Europeans and Americans cannot be given the sacred thread or sannyas, there is no need even to consider whether one is a gentleman or a rogue, because this is a spiritual movement which is not concerned with the external body of skin and bones. Because it is being properly conducted under the guidance of the Pancha-tattva, strictly following the regulated principles, it has nothing to do with external impediments. Because it is being properly conducted under the guidance of Pancha-tattva, strictly following the regulated principles, it has nothing to do with external impediments. Jagat Dubai, Jiver Hoila, Bijar, Nash, Tahadeki, Pancha-janer, Parama Ulas. When the 5 members of the Pancha-tattva saw the entire world drowned in love of Godhead and the seed of material enjoyment in the living entities completely destroyed, they all became exceedingly happy. In this connection, Srila Bhaktivedanta Saraswati Thakur writes in his Anubhashya that since the living entities all belong to the marginal potency of the Lord, each and every living entity has a natural tendency to become Krishna conscious, although at the same time the seed of material enjoyment is undoubtedly within him. The seed of material enjoyment, watered by the course of material nature, fructifies to become a tree of material entanglement that endows the living entity with all kinds of material enjoyment. To enjoy such material facilities is to be afflicted with the 3 material miseries. However, when by nature's law there is a flood, the seeds within the earth become inactive. Similarly, as the inundation of love of Godhead spreads all over the world, the seeds of material enjoyment become impotent. Thus, the more the Krishna consciousness movement spreads, the more the desire for material enjoyment decreases. The seed of material enjoyment automatically becomes impotent with the increase of the Krishna conscious movement. Instead of being envious, the Krishna consciousness is spreading all over the world by the grace of Lord Chaitanya. Those who are jealous should be happy, as indicated here by the words Parama Ulas. But because they are Kanishta Adhikaris or Prakrita Bhaktas, materialistic devotees who are not advanced in spiritual knowledge, they are envious instead of happy, and they try to find faults in the Krishna consciousness movement. Yet Srimad Prabodhananda Saraswati writes in his Chaitanya Charitamrita that when influenced by Lord Chaitanya's Krishna conscious movement, materialists become averse to talking about their wives and children. Supposedly learned scholars give up their tedious studies of Vedic literature. Yogis give up their impractical practices of monistic yoga. Ascetics give up their austere activities of penance and austerity. And sannyasis give up their study of Sankhya philosophy. They say they are all attracted. Thus they are all attracted by the Bhakti yoga practices of Lord Chaitanya and cannot relish a mellow superior to that of Krishna consciousness. Jata jata prema brishti kore pancha jane tata tata bore jala bhyape tribhuvane. The more the five members of the Pancha-tattva cause the rains of love of Godhead to fall, the more the inundation increases and spreads all over the world. The Krishna conscious movement is not stereotyped or stagnant. It will spread all over the world in spite of all objections by fools and rascals. The European and American militias cannot be accepted as Brahmins or sannyasi. Here it is indicated that this process will spread and inundate the entire world with Krishna consciousness. Mayavadi, Karmanishta, Kutarka, Gan, Nindaka, Pashandi Jata, Paduya Adam, Se Sab, Mahadaka, Dana Palaila, Se Banya Tasabare Chunite Narila. The impersonalists, fruitive workers, false logicians, blasphemers, non-devotees, and lowest among the student community are very expert in avoiding the Krishna conscious movement, and therefore the inundation of Krishna consciousness cannot touch them. The impersonalists, fruitive workers, false logicians, blasphemers, non-devotees, and lowest among the student community are very expert in avoiding the Krishna conscious movement, and therefore the inundation of Krishna consciousness cannot touch them. Like Mayavadi philosophers in the past, such as Prakashananda Saraswati of Benares, modern impersonalists are not interested in Lord Chaitanya's Krishna consciousness movement. They do not know the value of this material world. They consider it false and cannot understand how the Krishna conscious movement can utilize it. They are so absorbed in impersonal thought that they take it for granted that all spiritual variety is material. Because they do not know anything beyond their misconception of the Brahmajyoti, they cannot understand that Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is spiritual and therefore beyond the conception of material illusion. Whenever Krishna incarnates personally or as a devotee, these Mayavadi philosophers accept him as an ordinary human being. This is condemned in the Bhagavad Gita. Avajananti mamudha manoshim tanam ashritam parambhavam ajananto mamabhuta maheshwaram. Fools deride me when I descend in the human form. They do not know my transcendental nature as the Supreme Lord of all that be. There are also other unscrupulous persons who exploit the Lord's appearance by posing as incarnations to cheat the innocent public. An incarnation of God should pass the tests of the statements of the Shastras and also perform uncommon activities. One should not accept a rascal as an incarnation of God, but should test his ability to act as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. For example, Krishna taught Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita, and Arjuna also accepted him as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But for our understanding, Arjuna requested the Lord to manifest his universal form, thus testing whether he was actually the Supreme Lord. Similarly, one must test a so-called incarnation of Godhead according to the standard criteria. To avoid being misled by an exhibition of mystic powers, it is best to examine the so-called incarnation of God in the light of the statements of the Shastras. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is described in the Shastras as an incarnation of Krishna. Therefore, if one wants to imitate Lord Chaitanya and claim to be an incarnation, he must show evidence from the Shastras about his appearance to substantiate his claim. Tahadeki Mahaprabhu Korana Chintan Jagat Dubai Te Ame Korelun Jatan Keho Keho Adi-lila Pratigya Hoila Banga Tasaba Dubai Te Patiba Kichuranga. Seeing that the mayavadis and others were fleeing, Lord Chaitanya thought, I wanted everyone to be immersed in this inundation of love of Godhead, but some of them have escaped. Therefore, I shall devise a trick to drown them also. Here is an important point. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu wanted to invent a way to capture the mayavadis and others who did not take interest in the Krishna conscious movement. This is a symptom of an acharya. An acharya who comes for the service of the Lord cannot be expected to conform to a stereotype, for he must find the ways and means by which Krishna consciousness may be spread. Sometimes jealous persons criticize the Krishna consciousness movement because it engages equally both boys and girls in distributing love of Godhead, not knowing that boys and girls in countries like Europe, in countries in Europe and America, mix very freely. These fools and rascals criticize the boys and girls in Krishna consciousness for intermingling. But these rascals should consider that one cannot suddenly change a community's social customs. However, since both the boys and the girls are being trained to become preachers, those girls are not ordinary girls, but are as good as their brothers who are preaching Krishna consciousness. Therefore, to engage both boys and girls in fully transcendental activities is a policy intended to spread the Krishna conscious movement. These jealous fools who criticize the intermingling of boys and girls will simply have to be satisfied with their own foolishness, because they cannot think of how to spread Krishna consciousness by adopting ways and means that are favorable for this purpose. Their stereotype methods will never help spread Krishna consciousness. Therefore, what we are doing is perfect by the grace of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, for it is he who proposed to invent a way to capture those who strayed from Krishna consciousness. So this time, at the time of this criticism, the criticism was coming from Srila Prabhupada's God brothers, that men and women were intermingling, associating with each other. Because their conception was in India that only men should engage in Krishna consciousness and the women should come as an audience to see what's going on. But Srila Prabhupada considered that an acharya can adopt or can adapt things according to time and place and circumstances. So he engaged men and women both in service, and they all became very successful in spreading Krishna consciousness, especially in America, in England, in Europe. It worked very well. Eta bole manikachu Korea bichar sannyasa ashrama prabhu koil angikar. Thus the Lord accepted the sannyas order of life after full consideration. There was no need for Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to accept sannyas, for he is God himself and therefore has nothing to do with the material bodily conception of life. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu did not identify himself with any of the 8 varnas and ashramas, namely Brahman, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra, Brahmachari, Grihastha, Vanaprastha, and Sannyas. He identified himself as the Supreme Spirit. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, or for that matter, any pure devotee, never identifies with these social and spiritual divisions of life. For a devotee is always transcendental to these different gradations of society. Nevertheless, Lord Chaitanya decided to accept sannyas on the ground that when he became a sannyasi, everyone would show him respect and in that way be favored. Although there was actually no need for him to accept sannyas, he did so for the benefit of those who might think him an ordinary human being. The main purpose of his accepting sannyas was to deliver the mayavadi sannyasis. This will be evident later in this chapter. Srila Bhaktivedanta Saraswati Thakur has explained the term mayavadi as follows. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is transcendental to the material conception of life. A mayavadi is one who considers the body of the Supreme Lord Krishna to be made of maya, and who also considers the abode of the Lord and the process of approaching him, devotional service, to be maya. The mayavadi considers all the paraphernalia of devotional service to be maya. Maya refers to material existence, which is characterized by the reactions of fruitive activities. Mayavadis consider devotional service to be among such fruitive activities. According to them, when Bhagavatas, devotees, are purified by philosophical speculation, they will come to the real point of liberation. Those who speculate in this way regarding devotional service are called kutarkikas, false logicians, and those who consider devotional service to be fruitive activity are called karmanishtas. Those who criticize devotional service are called nindikas, blasphemers. Similarly, non-devotees who consider devotional service to be material are called pashandis, and scholars with a similar viewpoint are called adama paduyas. The kutarkikas, nindikas, pashandis, and adama paduyas all avoided the benefit of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's movement of developing love of God. At Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu felt compassion for them, and it is for this reason that he decided to accept a sannyas order. For by seeing him as a sannyasi, they would offer him respects. The sannyas order is still respected in India. Indeed, the very dress of a sannyasi still commands respect from the Indian public. Therefore, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu accepted sannyas to facilitate preaching his devotional cult, although otherwise he had no need to accept the fourth order of spiritual life. So sometimes when you talk to people, they'll say they want to take sannyas. And if you ask them why they want to take sannyas, they say, so people will respect them and then they can preach. But this is actually a bad argument. Because when Mahaprabhu took sannyas, people respected him. But he's the Supreme Lord, so they actually got spiritual benefit. What's the word? Spiritual benefit, different than punya. Punya is you get some pious results. If you do something good for others, you get back pious results. But Mahaprabhu's taking sannyas is not on that level. His taking of sannyas gives people spiritual benefit. And if someone says they want to take sannyas so people will respect him, we can answer, well, what good does it do if people respect you? You should be able to get respect by your activities, not by your dress. So, Sukriti is a word. By people respecting Mahaprabhu as being a sannyasi, they get Sukriti. If somebody just takes sannyas and people will respect him or not respect him, there's no question of them getting Sukriti that way. It is false prestige. When I wanted to take sannyas, I asked Prabhupada to take sannyas. He said, "Why do you want to take sannyas?" I said, "Because I can't get along with my God brothers." By that I meant I wanted to be able to work by myself and able to do something. And when I told him that, he said, "Very good reason." He actually told me that. I said, "I cannot get along with my God brothers." That was first thing. And then I indicated, I want to do my own program. I don't want to, like when Srila Prabhupada wanted to go to the West, wanted to take sannyas first, and he approached the Chaitanya Mat, and he was told by the Acharya there, well, first you're a Grihasta, first you participate here for a year, and then we'll consider giving you sannyas. But Srila Prabhupada said, he didn't accept those conditions. He felt some urgency. And he also told us, he said, I wasn't there just to be their babysitter in their ashram. Now, you could say, well, that's a good reason. But actually, when Prabhupada went to the West, he did help many very young Westerners in Krishna consciousness. So he didn't want to be a babysitter in terms of just taking care of an ashram in India, but he did, by his humility, he was, working with young people in the West, teaching them by his own example. But there's a difference. One was just to be able to keep things running, and the other activity was actually to be able to bring people to Krishna consciousness, to be able to preach. So, Chabisha Vatsara Chila Grihasta Ashrame Panchavimshati Varshe Koila Jati Dharme Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu remained in householder life for 24 years, and on the verge of his 25th year, he accepted the sannyas order. There are 4 orders of spiritual life, namely Brahmacharya, Grihastha, Vanaprastha, and Sannyas, and in each of these ashrams there are 4 divisions. The divisions of the Brahmachari ashram are Savitriya, Prajapatya, Brahma, and Brihat, and the divisions of the Grihastha ashram are Varta, professionals, Sanchai, accumulators, Shalina, those who do not ask anything from anyone, and Shilonchana, those who collect grains from the paddy fields. Similarly, the divisions of the Vanaprastha ashram are Vaikanash, Valakilya, Odumbara, and Venapa, and the divisions of sannyas are Kutichaka, Bahudaka, Hamsa, and Nishkriya. There are two kinds of sannyasis who are called Dhiras and Narottamas, as stated in Srimad Bhagavatam. At the end of the month of January in the year 1432 Shakabda, or AD 1510, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu accepted the sannyas order from Keshav Bharati, who belonged to the Shankar Sampradaya. Sannyas Koriya Prabhu, that's the impersonalist Sampradaya. Shankaracharya is Sampradaya. Sannyas Koriya Prabhu Koila Akarshan, Jatika, Palanachila, Tarkika, Digan. After accepting the sannyas order, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu attracted the attention of all those who had evaded him, beginning with the logicians. Paduya Pashandi Karmi Nindakari Jat Tara Ashi Prabhupai Hoy Avanat. Thus the students, infidels, fruitive workers, and critics all came to surrender unto the lotus feet of the Lord. Aparad Kamaila Dubila Premajale Keba Edaibe Prabhur Prema Mahajale. Lord Chaitanya excused them all, and they merged into the ocean of devotional service, for no one can escape the unique loving network of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was an ideal acharya. An acharya is an ideal teacher who knows the purpose of the revealed scriptures, behaves exactly according to their injunctions, and teaches his students to adopt those principles also. As an ideal acharya, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu devised ways to capture all kinds of atheists and materialists. Every acharya has a specific means of propagating his spiritual movement with the aim of bringing men to Krishna consciousness. Therefore, the method of one acharya may be different from that of another, but the ultimate goal is never neglected. Srila Rupa Goswami recommends, Tasmat kenapi upayena mana Krishna niveshayet sarve bidi nisheda shur etayor eva kingaraha. An acharya should devise a means by which people may somehow or other come to Krishna consciousness. First, they should become Krishna conscious, and all the prescribed rules and regulations may later gradually be introduced. In our Krishna conscious movement, we follow this policy of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. For example, since boys and girls in the Western countries freely intermingle, special concessions regarding their customs and habits are necessary to bring them to Krishna consciousness. The acharya must devise a means to bring them to devotional service. Therefore, although I am a sannyasi, I sometimes take part in getting boys and girls married. Although in the history of sannyas, no sannyasi has personally taken part in marrying his disciples. So when I came, Srila Prabhupada was doing a pandal, that's with big tens and thousands of people. In fact, this was in the center of Bombay, and was called the Cross Maidan. And it was a huge pandal, and it was said that there was as much as 70,000 people coming for programs, and the whole ground was covered with people, and they had billboards all over the city announcing the program, that Krishna consciousness coming to Bombay and everything. So, and in the program, and during the programs also, Srila. What?
You say it was in Calcutta?
No, Bombay.
This is Bombay.
Yeah, and there were so many people, and billboards all over Bombay actually, announcing the program. And during the program, Prabhupada initiated people, and he also performed a marriage ceremony right on the stage. I think there was more than one couple married, but I remember what marriage was. Vegavan from Vegavan and Padmavati. And Vegavan was from Sweden. Padmavati, she was from Australia. Did that marriage. And someone else also, I believe. Sabanishtarite Prabhu Kripa Avatar, Sabanishtarite Kori Chaturi Apar. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appeared in order to deliver all the fallen souls. Therefore, he devised many methods to liberate them from the clutches of Maya. The Krishna book had just come out, and in the Krishna book there was mentioned Mahaprabhu marrying not Mahaprabhu, pardon me, that Krishna married 16,108 wives. He married them. 16,000 of them been stolen from a demon, and because that demon had kidnapped them, nobody would accept them as wives, because that was the custom. If some woman was touched or kidnapped by somebody else, nobody would marry them. So 16,000 women, they all were, Krishna married them all. And then he also had, besides those 16,000 wives, he had 100, there was 16,108 altogether. So the Krishna book had just come out. And in the beginning of the Krishna book, there was mention of Siddhanti Maharaj. He was then called Chitsukhananda. He was mentioned in the introduction to the Krishna book because he had donated towards the printing of the Krishna book. It was printed by Daini, I think it was Dai Nippon or Press or something. It was printed in Japan. It mentioned Siddhanti Maharaj. And then Prabhupada gave many people sannyas, and it mentioned all these different wives of Krishna. They each had 10 sons. So many of the people were given sannyas. They just went down the Krishna book and gave so many persons names of Krishna's sons. Like maybe from Jambavati was one wife. Then there's mentioned 10 sons like Shamba and Dravida, different sons. So 10 people maybe were given names of one wife's sons, and then other. Almost everybody initiated at that time received names of Krishna's sons.
Like Prabhupada.
Yeah.
Prabhupada agreed?
Pardon me?
He agreed to give the name of Krishna's son?
Yeah. He gave them all. He personally told them, your name is this, your name is that. And
He took it from the Krishna book.
yeah, many were taken just from the pages of the Krishna book. There were a lot of people, so it was a lot of names of Krishna's sons. And as it says here, he says, therefore, although I am a sannyasi, I sometimes take part in getting boys and girls married. Although in the history of sannyas, no sannyasi has personally taken part in marrying his disciples. And in the Sri Chaitanya Saraswati Mutt, there was a marriage not done by Guru Maharaj or Govinda Maharaj, but at that time there was someone getting married in the compound who lived, one of the grihastas living in the compound. Their son or daughter was getting married, and Guru Maharaj, he asked his brahmachari disciples, don't go to the marriage. Because he said, I'm not trying to encourage brahmacharis to get married. But grihastas could go.
So why Prabhupada wanted people to get married?
Because they were going to get wanted to get married, so he didn't discourage them. Govinda Maharaj also arranged for one marriage too. Govinda Maharaj arranged for the marriage of Saraswati and Adi-lila. Srila Govinda Maharaj helped pay for that marriage in Calcutta.
Yeah, but he was not celebrating.
Huh?
He was like Guru Maharaj. He was not celebrating marriage in the month.
No, that was done outside the month. It was done in Calcutta.
Mm-hmm. Why? Because he encouraged brahmachari not to get married, right?
No, maybe also, but he wanted it to be just he wanted to arrange that marriage in a nice way, so he did it. He did it in Calcutta, maybe better facilities. And I remember one of the persons who involved who helped with the marriage was also someone in, I forget his name, but he was like involved in as he was like considered a very famous like strong man in India, like was like Mr. Universe or something like that. He helped with the marriage. Yeah. But that was Saraswati.
Oh yeah, but they already knew each other from before.
Yes.
And it's not that he arranged it.
No, he didn't. But they knew each other. They were
already engaged from before.
Yeah. Yeah. So, but Govinda Maharaj wanted to help them. Sabanishtarite Prabhu Kripa Bhatar Sabanishtarite Kore Chaturiyapar. So I'm saying, Srila Prabhupada arranged for sometimes his disciples to get married. He even did sometimes the fire sacrifice. Govinda Maharaj didn't do that, but he helped financially for them to get married.
That was just one case.
Maybe just one case, I guess. Sabanishtarite Prabhu Kripavatar Sabanishtarite Kore Chaturiyapar. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appeared in order to deliver all the fallen souls. Therefore, he devised many methods to liberate them from the clutches of Maya. It is the concern of the Acharya to show mercy to the fallen souls. In this connection, Desha Kala Patra, the place, the time, and the object should be taken into consideration. Since the European and American boys and girls in our Krishna conscious movement preach together, less intelligent men criticize that they are mingling without restriction. In Europe and America, boys and girls mingle unrestrictedly and have equal rights. Therefore, it is not possible to completely separate the men from the women. However, we are thoroughly instructing both men and women how to preach, and actually they are preaching wonderfully. Of course, we very strictly prohibit illicit sex. Boys and girls who are not married are not allowed to sleep together or live together, and there are separate arrangements for boys and girls in every temple. Grihastas live outside the temple, for in the temple we do not allow even husband and wife to live together. The results of this are wonderful. Both men and women are preaching the gospel of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Lord Krishna with redoubled strength. In this verse, the words Sabanishtarite Kori Chaturiyapar indicate that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu wanted to deliver one and all. Therefore, it is a principle that a preacher must strictly follow the rules and regulations laid down in the Shastras, yet at the same time devise a means by which the preaching work to reclaim the fallen may go on with full force. So, we also tried to do that in one thing in India, and that was also when we tried to establish their Bhakti Tilak Niriha Maharaj as a successor to Acharya Maharaj. So we got many sannyasis from all the different mats of the Gaudiya Mat. They came and participated in establishing him as Acharya Maharaj's successor. Although Niriya Maharaj is only 31 years old. But so many sannyasis, they drove 2.5, 3 hours to get to Tarakeshwar. We did where the program was. And there were 800, besides the sannyasis, about 40 sannyasis, there were 800 people in the program.
Why you didn't do the program in Shingapali?
Because we didn't have any control of Nishingapali. Nishingapali was under the control of someone else. I'm not going to say his name, but who was not favorable to us and not favorable to Niriya Maharaj. What?
Still like that?
Still like that, yes. Tabe Nija Bhakta Kara, and that worked very nicely. And then because during the Jagannath Ratha Yatra, that Niriya Maharaj took a group to Jagannath Puri to participate like we would do every year, and he took 650 persons with him. Big group. So the idea was that what we were trying to do is help, especially India. Help India because there were so many, India was very divided and unorganized. So we got the help of so many sannyasis from the Chaitanya Mat, from all the different mats of from Madha Maharaj's Mat, and so many persons that came to help in that. And they all spoke. There was like 40 people, each spoke for 5 minutes during the program. The program went on for 5 hours.
Yeah, I always saw the video.
Huh?
There was a video about
It was what?
Video?
A video, yeah. I have that video. But I thought that was successful. We did it in order to be able to establish establish something going on in India to help. That's why we did it. I think it worked that worked nicely. So sometimes things are done according to someone's vision, and they'll try to do something to give some help to people.
Vadut Maharaj and Srila Maharaj could not come.
Who couldn't come?
Sripad, Vadut Maharaj. And Trivikram Maharaj.
Trivikram Maharaj.
Goswami could not come.
Well, they didn't go, but Puri Maharaj, Bhaktivedanta Puri Maharaj went, and
Yeah, I know.
yeah.
Since he came from so far away, they're like closer than him, so they could have also come. Well, they were not interested,
Each has their own program. Trivikram Maharaj was in Brazil. He was far away.
Vadut and Goswami,
They have their own program.
Where could I find the video?
Huh?
Where could I find the video?
You have to, I don't know, you have to look online. I'll see if I can find a link. Tabe Ninja Bhakta Koila Jata Mulecha Adi Sabe Adi-lila Matra Kashira Mayavadi. All were converted into devotees of Lord Chaitanya, even the Mulechas and Yavanas. Only the impersonalist followers of Shankaracharya evaded him. In this verse, it is clearly indicated that although Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu converted Muslims and other Mulechas into devotees, the impersonalist followers of Shankaracharya could not be converted. After accepting the renounced order of life, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu converted many karmanishtas who were addicted to fruitive activities, many great logicians like Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, nindikas, blasphemers like Prakashananda Saraswati, Pashandis, non-devotees like Jagai and Madai, and Adama Paduyas, degraded students like Mukunda and Madai, and degraded students like Mukunda and his friends. All of them gradually became devotees of the Lord, even the Patans Muslims. But the worst offenders, the impersonalists, were extremely difficult to convert, for they very tactfully escaped the devotees of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. In describing the Kashira Mayavadi, Srila Bhaktivedanta Saraswati Thakur has explained that persons who are bewildered by empiric knowledge or direct sensual perception, and who thus consider that even this limited material world can be gauged by their material estimations, conclude that anything that one can discern by direct sense perception is but maya or illusion. They maintain that although the absolute truth is beyond the range of sense perception, it includes no spiritual variety or enjoyment. According to the Kashira Mayavadis, the spiritual world is simply void. They do not believe in the personality of the absolute truth or in his varieties of activities in the spiritual world. Although they have their own arguments, which are not very strong, they have no conception of the variegated activities of the absolute truth. These impersonalists, who are followers of Shankaracharya, are generally known as Kashira Mayavadis, impersonalists residing in Varanasi. Near Varanasi, there is another group of impersonalists who are known as Saranata Mayavadis. So Varanasi, or Kashi, because they say Kashira, refers to Kashi. Varanasi is what's now called Benares. But I think maybe now it's not called Benares. They might have gone back to the old name. Okay, I'm just going to finish this report. Near Varanasi, there is another group of impersonalists who are known as Saranata Mayavadis. Outside the city of Varanasi is a place known as Saranata, where there's a big Buddhist stupa. Many followers of Buddhist philosophy live there, and they are known as Saranata Mayavadis. Impersonalists, or Saranata, differ from those of Varanasi, for the Varanasi impersonalists propagate the idea that the impersonal Brahman is truth, whereas material varieties are false. But the Saranata impersonalists do not even believe that. Do not even believe that the absolute truth or Brahman can be understood as the opposite of Maya or illusion. According to their vision, materialism is the only manifestation of the absolute truth. Factually, both the Kashira and the Saranata Mayavadis, as well as any philosophers who have no knowledge of the spirit soul, are advocates of utter materialism. None of them have clear knowledge regarding the absolute or the spiritual world. Philosophers like the Saranata Mayavadis, who do not believe in the spiritual existence of the absolute truth but consider material varieties to be everything, do not believe that there are two kinds of nature, inferior material and superior spiritual, as described in the Bhagavad Gita. Actually, neither the Varanasi or Saranata Mayavadis accept the principles of the Bhagavad Gita due to a poor fund of knowledge. Since these impersonalists who do not have perfect spiritual knowledge cannot understand the principles of Bhakti Yoga, they must be classified among the non-devotees who are against the Krishna conscious movement. We sometimes feel inconvenienced by the hindrances offered by these impersonalists, but we do not care about their so-called philosophy, for we are propagating our own philosophy as presented in Bhagavad Gita as it is, and getting successful results. Theorizing as if devotional service were subject to their mental speculation, both kinds of Mayavadi impersonalists conclude that the subject matter of Bhakti Yoga is a creation of Maya, and that Krishna, devotional service, and the devotee are also Maya. Therefore, as stated by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Mayavadi Krishna Aparadi. All the Mayavadis are offenders to Lord Krishna. It is not possible for them to understand the Krishna conscious movement. Therefore, we do not value their philosophical conclusions. However expert such quarrelsome impersonalists are in putting forward their so-called logic, we defeat them in every respect and go forward with our Krishna conscious movement. Their imaginative, mental speculation cannot deter the progress of the Krishna conscious movement, which is completely spiritual and is never under the control of such Mayavadis. So why this is being mentioned so much here is because, as we see later on in the chapter, this chapter deals with the conversion of the Mayavadi sannyasis living in Varanasi or in Benares. And that's what so much is being talked about this, because this is the center theme, one of the central themes of what's happening here in the 7th chapter about the Pancha-tattva. And it's interesting because the first 12 chapters of the Adi-lila are what Guru Maharaj calls ontological. They're describing the basis and helping explain who, the principles of Krishna consciousness and who people are, understanding who people are, who has descended, etc. It's all given in 12 chapters, and it's not till chapter 13 of the Adi-lila that it deals with Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's appearance, his birth. That's in chapter 13. But in this chapter, chapter 7, you hear about Mahaprabhu going to Varanasi as a sannyasi. So this chapter is about the Pancha-tattva. So this is the only chapter in the first chapter, 12 chapters, where it's actually talking about Mahaprabhu, and it's even later, it's after his 24th year when he took sannyas. It's dealing with that. Otherwise, the Leela Mahaprabhu, his appearance, his activities, doesn't start till chapter 13. So this chapter is very interesting in the sense that it's really describing helping understand how Mahaprabhu defeated the mayavadi philosophy in dealing with the impersonalists. So that all these points are being explained. Anyway, I'll stop here. We'll sing Hari Haraya, and then it's a little late, but we'll take prasadam. Hari Haraya Nama Krishna Jadavaya Nama. Hari Haraya Jadavaya Madhavaya Keshavaya Nama. Gopal Govindaram Shri Madhusudan. Giridhari Gopinatha Maranama. Sri Chaitanya Nityananda Sri Advaita Chandra. Chaitanya Nityananda Sri Garadhara Shiva Sadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Sri Chaitanya Nityananda Sri Advaita Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Where was I? It was Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. I'll start again. I lost my. Hari Haraya Nama Krishna Jadavaya Nama. Hari Haraya Krishna Jadavaya Nama. Jadavaya Madhavaya Keshavaya Nama. Jadavaya Nama. Gopal Govindaram Shri Madhusudan. Gopal Govindaram Shri Madhusudan. Giridhari Gopinatha Maranama. Giridhari Gopinatha Maranama. Sri Chaitanya Nityananda Sri Advaita Chandra. Sri Advaita Chandra. Garadhara Shiva Sadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Garadhara Jai Rupa Sanatam Bhakta Raghunath. Jai Rupa Sanatam Bhakta Raghunath. Sri Jiva Gopala Bhatta Rasa Raghunath. Sri Jiva Gopala Jaite Vignanasha Vishta Puran. Jaite Vignanasha Vishta Puran. Echai Gosai Jarmui Taradan. Echai Gosai Jarmui Taradan. Dasavar Padarenu Mora Panchagras. Asabara Padarenu Mora Panchagras. Tadir Chanana Sevi Bhakta Sanimas. Adir Chanana Sevi Bhakta Sanimas. Janame Janame More Amilas. Janame Janame More Amilas. Echai Gosai Jabe Braje Koilabas. Echai Gosai Jabe Braje Koilabas. Radha Krishna Nitya Lila Korila Bhaka. Radha Krishna Nitya Lila Korila Bhaka. Anande Bolo Hari Bhaja Vrindavan. Anande Bolo Hari Bhaja Vrindavan. Shri Guru Vaishnava Pade Majai Aman. Shri Guru Vaishnava Pade Majai Aman. Shri Guru Vaishnava Pad Padma Glorias. Shri Guru Vaishnava Pad Padma Glorias. Adinam Sankirtana Kohe Naradamunas. Nam Sankirtana Kohe Naradamunas. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Nitai Gora Hari Bo, Hari Bo, Hari Bo, Hari Bo, Nitai Gora Hari Bo, Hari Bo, Hari Bo, Hari Bo, Nitai Gora Hari Bo, Hari Bo, Hari Bo, Hari Bo, Nitai Gora Hari Bo, Hari Bo, Hari Bo, Hari Bo. Jai Saparikara Shishi Guru Guranga Gandharvika Giridhari Ju Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnu Pad Paramasa Paravajaka Charyasta Tara Sadashi Shimad Srila Bhakti Nirmalacharya Maharaj Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnu Pad Paramasa Paravajaka Charyasta Tara Sadashi Shimad Srila Bhakti Sundar Govinda Dev Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnu Pad Paramansa Paravajaka Charyasta Tara Sadashi Shimad Srila Bhakti Rakshira Dev Goswami Maharaj ki jai. Jai Bhagavan Srila Bhaktivedanta Saraswati Goswami Thakur ki jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Srila Gaur Kishordas Babaji Maharaj ki jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Srila Satchidananda Bhaktivedanta Thakur ki jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Vaishnava Sarvabhauma Srila Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj ki jai. Rupanuga Guru Bharga ki jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki jai. Shri Rupa Sanatana Bhatta Raghunath Shri Jiva Gopal Bhattadasha Raghunath Shad Goswami Prabhu ki jai. Premasigo Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Shri Gaura Bhaktavrinda ki jai. Jai Om Jai Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami Prabhu ki jai. Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita ki jai. Vishvavaranya Srila Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Prabhupad ki jai. Srila Bhakti Kushamashra Maharaj ki jai. Srila Bhakti Tilak Neriya Maharaj ki jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai. Shri Navadip Dham ki jai. Shri Mayapur ki jai. Saparshada Shri Nityananda Prabhu ki jai. Saparshada Shriman Mahaprabhu ki jai. Shri Koladvip ki jai. Sri Chaitanya Saraswat Mat ki jai. Soquel Sri Chaitanya Saraswat Seva Ashram ki jai. Ganga Devi ki jai. Tulasi Maharani ki jai. Bhakti Devi ki jai. Shri Vrindavan ki jai. Shri Radha Krishna Gopi Govardhan Sham Guna Radha Kunda Kalindi Yamuna Jo ki jai. Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Shri Harinam Sankirtan ki jai. All the assembled devotees ki jai. Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Bol.